The Mad Max franchise is one of those franchises you forget is even a franchise, if that makes any sense. Let me explain. Before the meteoric success of Mad Max Fury Road, in the 1980s, George Miller had released a whole trilogy of Mad Max films that received a ton of popular acclaim and success. And since I'm, well, 20 years old, my ignorant self has not seen a single one of the original films from back in the 1980s. So in preparation to see Furiosa, a Mad Max movie prequel to the 2015 film, I figured instead of doing a basic review of the film, let's do one of those tier lists that everyone is not sick of. So in today's video, grab your gun, fasten your seatbelt, because ladies and gentlemen, we're about to do a deep dive and ranking of every single Mad Max film from Mad Max to Furiosa. Now, this movie, well, let me just say that going from Fury Road as the only Mad Max movie I'd ever seen to this one is like being hit in the face with a flash grenade. Look, I understand that movies from the late 1970s, early 1980s have their specific jank to them, but man, do certain scenes in this movie look particularly dated. When watching this movie, my main complaint with it was how the story was just all over the place, and I was genuinely confused what time period this movie took place in. Since every Mad Max movie looks desolate and deserted, it confused me to see telephone poles, green grass, roads. Like, it looks like this movie could have been filmed in the state of Washington, for all I know. So from a viewer standpoint, the actual environment of this movie threw me for a loop. But for all things considered, this movie had an insanely low budget, which for me is the main reason why this movie feels so different compared to the later installments. This movie cost about $350,000 to make back in 1978, which is around $2 million in today's standards. So for what they were able to utilize in its budget for this movie is pretty cool. The overall summary of this movie is that Mad Max is played by Mel Gibson. Sweet, sweet baby Mel Gibson, who is a futuristic cop that targets this specific cult-like gang on motorcycles as they wreak havoc on his life. It's considered a revenge flick, but honestly, it's only a revenge flick for like the last 20 minutes. Before that, you just have to sit in this world as it drags on for an hour before anything crazy meaningful happens. Again, its budget constraints are 100% the reason why I didn't feel immersed in this world when watching the first one compared to the other installments. This movie's plot felt like a bunch of random scenes cobbled together for an hour before the main plot of the movie picks up by its final 25 minutes. I believe had the movie been tighter and focused more on the revenge plot of Max, then it would have been a better made movie and more entertaining for me, because the last 20 minutes of this movie were pretty cool. It was just the beginning hour felt really all over the place with a bunch of scenes feeling kind of meaningless. Sure, we get to know his police force a bit, but they don't matter in the grand scheme of the ending. The cult feels lifeless other than the fact they do some heinous shit to Max at the end, and the environment of the movie confusing me as to if this was even supposed to be the future holds this movie back from being rewatchable to me. If I were to place this on a letter grade on a tier list, I'd probably put this on like D. If you have fond memories with this movie, that's completely okay. But I'd never rewatch this one, and it only makes me excited to get to the higher octane, bigger budgeted movies the later installments provide. Now this is exactly what I expected when entering these older movies. Pure jank, action, fun, with insane special effects, but also a good story. This movie finds Max wandering the wasteland by his lonesome with his trusty dog friend. Mad Max out here had the dog wasteland relationship way before Fallout, and they must find a spot with gas to fill up their V8 engine, where he runs into this random guy who tells Max about a community of people close by who are hoarding their gas, and if Max can get there and try and trade with them, he'll be able to drive away to another random town with whatever he has in mind. But of course, things don't go as planned, and Max finds himself doing a lot of extracurricular activities to get the resources he needs. And as a viewer, these side quests he goes on are a lot of fun to watch. My first thought when watching this movie was immediately how this film was very much what inspired a lot of my favorite scenes in Fury Road. And I know, if you've already seen these movies before, then that's a no-brainer. But to me, who has only the latest installment to base their judgments, it was cool to see, okay? Let me have this moment. Anyways, the massive truck hauling scenes where Max is driving and the Wasteland gang is chasing after him was pure fun to watch, as well as pretty much the entire final scene where Max drives the fake oil truck to lure away the semi-erotic wearing gang of miscreants so they don't steal the real oil from the other crew. It's very clear that you can see George had a lot of fun with creating these costumes for the gang. I mean, there's only a couple loose missing pieces away from a different type type of movie, you know what I'm saying? But the increase in budget is really noticeable. This budget was about $4 million for this film, and it shows. The locations, the costumes, the action scenes, it all feels like the Mad Max I'm used to seeing. I also enjoyed how simple the story was, as well as the inciting incident for the entire movie happening very early on. We see Max run out of fuel, and the rest of the movie is him dealing with that consequence. Again, the first movie's main plot didn't really become engaging until Max's family dies, and he finally has something to do. Before that, he just kind of did nothing. It was nice seeing his character have a tad bit of growth as well, where you see him grow from being a selfish, gas-guzzling warrior to bringing down those walls a bit, helping others, as well as slowly realizing he enjoys being a little mentor to this caveman-like kid in the Wasteland. This movie, although seeming completely different to the first one, has nice callbacks to what happened in the past, like the child, for instance, his previous injuries, and being closed off to people after losing those he loved. It was nice seeing that this movie feels completely new, but did have this continuation to it. I also loved how the opening was just a complete explanation for what happened to the world and how different it became. It makes the first movie feel like it was retconned in because of how different they were. It felt like the writers came together and was like, okay, listen, George, why don't we take this new budget, yeah, and create a completely different world with better costumes and an actual story, and just explain why the first movie was different in the opening sequence. And George sat there like, God damn it, you're a fucking genius. Let's do it. And hey, I can't complain. This shit was awesome. If I had to throw this one on the tier list, I'd happily give this movie an A. I would rewatch this one for sure because it was fun, kept me hooked, and for its 90-minute runtime, it flew by. And that's a telltale sign of a good movie, in my opinion. Oh yeah, I got some Thunderdome from this movie, alright. Mad Max 3 is the perfect conclusion to the 80s trilogy, in my opinion, and I feel like they really got the tone and vibe right for it. It felt like each movie was just getting progressively better, and the third one is where all of the right pieces fit into place. Its action scenes are super well done, the set design and costume designs are amazing, and the overall tone and vibe for this film is bar none my favorite of the three I've seen so far in this original trilogy. This movie finds Max out by himself, wandering the desolate world until he comes across a town called Bartertown, where his items, specifically his car, were taken. Along the way, he gets asked by Tina Turner's character to infiltrate an organization that runs the energy production of the town and kill off their leader so he can get his car back, along as help Tina Turner get power over the town. Max gets thrown into an off-brand UFC match entitled Thunderdome, where he must kill one of the enemies to win. But after not doing so, Max is sent out to the Gulag.
Welcome to the Gulag,
where he finds a group of children living in an area of utopia with water and provisions, and must save the children from getting caught up in Bartertown's messed up politics and world. Along the way, a bunch of crazy action shit happens, and the stakes just keep rising from there. When I was watching this film, I noticed this one thing about Max that I couldn't shake. A lot of the main action beats of the story happen because Max just gets thrusted into it. For instance, he wasn't planning to kill a bunch of cultists in the first one, they just happened to kill his family. In the second one, all he needed was oil, but ended up having to fight a bunch of gang members in order to receive it. And in this third one, he just wants to get his items back, but is finding himself walking all over and getting into these crazy situations, not because he seeks them out, but is finding himself at the wrong place at the wrong time. And I like that a lot about these movies, especially in the second and third one. The third one maximizes its budget to full effect and takes what works so well in the second and amplifies it to like 10. Like I mentioned before, the city of Bartertown is really well constructed, the environments look really well made, as well as the action scenes looking the most crisp and well put together of the three so far. Mel Gibson feels most at ease in this role by now, having by far the most lines in this movie compared to the other ones, and the other side characters are interesting enough to keep being invested in the story. While watching this movie with my brother though, I love how there is this one scene where Max runs into the weird pilot guy from the second film, but they don't mention how they know each other from before. Like, it's literally the same actor who also flies planes, and they don't say a word about the previous movie's events to each other at all. Every single movie in this trilogy can stand on its own, and as a franchise, it is the craziest thing to see. I'm so used to trilogies and franchises especially having very connected pieces to each other, but with Mad Max, you really can watch all of these movies out of order, and they still wrap up the story well enough that you don't really need to see any of the previous ones beforehand for it to make any sense. This third movie was a ton of fun to watch, and going from the first one to this one is an absolute whirlwind of an experience. If I had to throw this one on the tier list ranking, I'd give this one an S tier, no doubt. I'm thinking of buying this movie if I get the chance. It was so well made and is the absolute peak film of this original trilogy. Okay, so I finally rewatched this movie with the full context of the previous movies in hand, and not only does it help a little bit enhance the great story this movie already had, but god damn, this whole franchise benefits from modern technology so well. I've loved this movie even before watching the 80s films, and getting to see this movie again, not having seen it since I was like 11 years old, was awesome. This whole movie looks and feels really worn in, and the practical effects used here, plus the modern technology, look superb. It takes everything the previous movies did and amplifies it 100 times. Plus, it looks very clean, and the development of technology over the years helps to enhance the already cool aesthetic the previous movies developed. This film follows Max, now played by Tom Hardy, who gets taken into custody by members of ruthless leader Immortan Joe's clan. Along the way, a woman by the name of Furiosa escapes with 5 of Immortan Joe's wives, and along comes Max, as he finds himself again caught up in another crazy story, where he must work together with Furiosa to escape Immortan Joe and his clan, but also save the civilization being enslaved by Joe and his crew. God, this movie is straight up fun, insane, and thrilling to watch all the way through. This film is 2 hours long, which is the longest of all the movies so far, but it flies by. The stunts look ethereal, the CGI plus practical effects look so polished, and breathes life into this world so well. And whoever decided to throw rock music onto these chase sequences needs a raise. It 100% amplifies the experience here to welcome effect. Tom Hardy kills it as Max, and his chemistry with Charlize Theron is very well done. I also like the antagonists of this movie a lot. They felt very nuanced, more so than any villain group from before, and there was a lot of character to them that I enjoyed. This film takes the great aspects of Mad Max 2 and 3 and uses it to do some really incredible things due to the increase in technological development 30 years later. The story was simple, but very effective, kind of like Mad Max 2, and kept me engaged from start to finish. There's not really much else I can say about this film, but that it's truly freaking amazing, and if you haven't seen it, you must. Again, these movies stand alone very well, which is funny because I thought going into this that I'd get more context from the original trilogy, and I did a little bit, but for the most part, all of these movies are still very contained. I'm throwing this one up on S tier as well. So far, it's my favorite one of the 4, so we shall see how well Furiosa holds up compared to it. Now, for the movie you've all been waiting for me to review, Furiosa is pretty fucking awesome. I went into this movie particularly hyped because I watched all of the other movies beforehand leading into this one, but also because it's another modern day Mad Max film that I can bask in its glory on the big screen. Furiosa follows, well, Furiosa, from when she's living in the green place with her family and friends, and how she gets indoctrinated into Chris Hemsworth's Dementus cult, but also how she finds herself a part of driving the oil rig in Immortan Joe's people as well, and how it leads directly into Mad Max Fury Road. The movie does a fantastic job at pacing the entire film into a 5-act structure. Literally, the film is built into 5 chapters as we follow the story from start to finish, which I thought was a great touch. Again, similar to Fury Road, this franchise truly shines with modern technology. The CGI, the practical effects, and the cinematography all shine through here with this film due to the high resolution these new cameras have. The stunts and action scenes in here are also incredibly well made. Each scene feels really intense, and the action scenes are made even better because of the sound design team, who were straight cooking in the studio with this movie. Anya Taylor-Joy did a great job in this film, as expected. I mean, she's literally my soon-to-be wife. And shockingly, Chris Hemsworth gives a really good performance as Dementus, who is the antagonist of the film. There's a lot of standout moments with him that add a lot of layers to the overall development, to the characters and world as well that involve him. If I had to criticize anything about the film, I'd say it was a tad too long. The film is the longest in the franchise at 2 hours and 30 minutes, and although a lot of the film was entertaining, I thought it could have been cut down in some scenes. Overall though, the film is an amazing time from start to finish, and if you enjoyed Fury Road, you'll have an absolute blast of a time watching this film. Go and support a very well-made blockbuster while it's still in theaters, a movie of this scope deserves to be witnessed while in the cinema. If I had to throw this on the tier list, I'd put it above Mad Max 2 in the A tier. It's a great film and will be rewatched by me in the years to come, no doubt. Overall, the Mad Max movies are a jumble of random stories in each film that are mostly really good. Besides a budgetary restraint holding the first film back, every film after that provides a ton of great action, cool stunt scenes, and with the later films, amazing practical and CGI effects. It was a ton of fun going through each movie one by one before Furiosa, and it made the experience of watching Furiosa 10 times better, knowing the context of the franchise beforehand. Check out these movies if you can, and support Furiosa while it's still in theaters. You won't want to miss it. Let me know what your thoughts are for the franchise down in the comments below, and while you're down there, hit that like button. YouTube really likes when you do that, and it will share my video out to more people. That's all I have for today, guys. I'll see you all in another video very soon. Peace out.